Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your patience because just a few minutes, a little late, just trying to make sure that I had everything that I needed in order to be able to service everybody tonight. So let's get ready to jump on in. If you can place in the chat where you are streaming in from tonight, that would be great. That way I'll know who I've got tonight and who is coming from where. And I'll give it just a moment. All right. Let's see where people are coming from tonight. All right. All right. Thanks. Thanks. All right. Well, let's just jump into this Scrum Master Masterclass. We're going to go through a lot of different things as it relates to Scrum Masters and what they do, how they do it, why they do it. So let's just jump on in. Tonight, we're going to actually cover what, like I just said, what a Scrum Master actually does. We're going to talk about the 5 Scrum events. We're going to go over real world hard situations that a Scrum Master is going to face whenever they're in the role. Then we're going to jump into the certifications, the career aspirations, as well as live job openings currently. From there, then we'll just jump in and allow you guys to get off mute and ask any question that you want. Before we jump into any of that, I get the text may be just a little small, but just a little bit about me. My name is Dionne Rashad, and I am the owner of KDMJ Solutions. This whole webinar tonight in this entire class is sponsored by KDMJ Solutions. And what we do there is it's a firm that provides training. So whether that's project management training, agile training and coaching, we do a lot of technology type trainings as well. And we do it for various clients. There are times in which we're requested to come into various companies and help them with their transformation. And the transformation meaning that they're no longer going to run their projects from a waterfall perspective, but they're going to run them from an agile framework perspective. That's where we come in and we show them what's the difference, what it looks like, and what everyone's role is going to be. Just from a professional perspective, let me also include just a couple of degrees and certifications that I hold as well. So I have a master's in project management, a master's of human resource management, and a bachelor's of general studies. The certifications that I hold are an SPC. Now, I've heard it called a safe practice consultant, but I've also seen people call it a safe program consultant. So either way, I also hold an RTE certification, which is a release train engineer, an SSM, which is a safe Scrum Master, a CSM, which is a certified Scrum Master. Now, tonight we're going to dive into the difference between the two, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then I do have a professional license from Wainwright to be able to conduct professional coaching. And the last certification I would include would be the Six Sigma Green Belt. Now, with all of those certifications and getting to this point, it's just kind of like, how did you even get here? Well, I've always been a person that I enjoy teaching and training and coaching individuals, especially when it comes to growth and development. If I'm honest with you guys, I'll tell you that I started out my college career going in to be an elementary school teacher. And about halfway through, I went out and I spent time at an elementary school. And the gentleman told me, he said, "Oh my gosh, we'd love to have you come in and teach school." But he wanted me to teach third graders in a portable. When we walked out and I saw the portable and I saw the kids, we were all the same height. So I knew that day that teaching children, especially in an elementary school setting, was just not what I wanted to do. So I pulled out and I went back to school and changed my major to business, only to realize that I would still have to be in school even longer. So I was like, you know what? let's just do general studies and call it a day. So that's how I ended up here, is because I flipped and went into the corporate side where I trained and, grew people and developed people, and just ended up having to go back to my teaching roots. So that's why we're here tonight. So let me tell you what a Scrum Master actually is. If you know anything about project management, you know that project managers manage projects. A company may come in and say, hey, we want to move this purple button to this side of the screen and we want to make it yellow. Well, that requires a project. The company may even come in and say, hey, we want to integrate a new application, or we don't want this application anymore. It's got to go away. All of those are projects. So the project manager is involved because now the department is saying, we don't want it. The project manager, along with that department, is determining what does it take to get rid of that system, or to add a new one. So now they're writing down all the documentation, they're putting together all the tasks, and sometimes even assigning dates to them. And I'm going to say most times assigning dates to them, simply because on a waterfall project that project managers work on, you get a start date and an end date, and you get a budget. And between that start and end date, you have to complete all the work that's required within that budget. If you don't complete it, then what happens is now you have to go back and ask for additional money. I come in and I explain this to you simply because there's not that big of a difference between what a Scrum Master does and what a project manager does. The primary difference is that the Scrum Master is not writing down the task. They're not managing the budget. They don't really have any authority over the team, and they can't assign tasks out to people as well. They don't own anything that's in the backlog, and we'll talk a little bit about the backlog. That's what I would equate to the task that a Scrum Master would normally do. But then also, a Scrum Master is not a project manager. A Scrum Master is considered to be a servant leader. It's a person who's coaching the team to become an independent team. A Scrum Master is a person that jumps in and identifies that there are blockers or impediments. And they say, hey, let me help you resolve that problem. Because that's exactly what a blocker is. And that's exactly what an impediment is. It's a problem that the team is having, but someone's got to remove it so that the team can continue to work. Then the Scrum Master also shapes the team, and it builds trust within the team. And then the last part is that the Scrum Master is the most powerful enabler on the team. The Scrum Master, if done right, will have a team to where if you attend the meetings or not, it doesn't matter, especially the daily stand-ups, because the Scrum Master would have gotten the team to a point to where now they are being able to run completely on their own. The Scrum Master is accountable for the Scrum team, the product owner, and the organization. Now, just like I mentioned before, the Scrum team is the team that the Scrum Master oversees. And what I mean by oversees is that's who that Scrum Master is assigned to. So the work that Scrum team needs to do, that's their Scrum Master. That's the person who's going to be their servant leader, the person who's going to remove their impediments. And it's going to help them to have high value at the end of the sprint. The product owner is the person who manages the product, and they create product goals, and they create the backlog, and then they facilitate any type of collaboration that it may take with the stakeholder. So the third party that the Scrum Master engages with is the organization. So here they're going to lead and coach the organization on Scrum adoption. So you may have an SVP or a VP or an HR partner who may not know what Scrum is, And that's the responsibility of the Scrum Master, to get them up to speed, to get them to understand how it works, to help them also remove any roadblocks or impediments that may come up in order for the team to continue to complete their work. Now, when you look at a Scrum Master, there are 5 major events that a Scrum Master is responsible for. And what I decided to do here was to break it down between the 5 responsibilities of a CSM, which is a certified Scrum Master, and the 5 responsibilities of an SSM, which is a safe Scrum Master. Those are 2 different types of certifications that a person can obtain if they decide to be or want to be a Scrum Master. The main responsibilities are pretty much the same. The only nuance to it is going to be what it's called. So when you look at a certified Scrum Master, they have sprint planning, and that normally begins it normally begins 1 week and ends anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks, depending upon the organization and depending upon the team. And they're going to drive whatever the product owner has said that needed to be worked on. So the product owner comes in and indicates this is the type of work that needs to be done. It needs to be done within these 4 weeks. And here's the work, the task, the backlog that's going to be organized according to priority. The next responsibility of the Scrum Master, the certified Scrum Master, is a daily Scrum. Now, I enjoyed the daily Scrums because this is a 15-minute session. I would hold mine every day at the same time, because that way everyone knew, we didn't have to think about it. From a daily Scrum perspective, I've been able to handle them either in person or remote, because at times the teams were either offshore or in a totally different state. But that same time every day, we would come together and we would talk about what we did yesterday, what we're going to work on today, and if we have any impediments. Because what I'm listening for as a Scrum Master is, are we moving toward our sprint goal? And if we are moving toward our sprint goal, great. But if we are not moving toward our sprint goal, after that daily stand up, I would talk to each person to identify why we are not moving forward and what could I do as your Scrum Master to help you to continue to move forward. The next event that the Scrum Master is responsible for is the sprint review. So these are really cool because you get a chance at the end of the sprint to demo what you've created for the product owner as well as the stakeholders. And a demo is just a demonstration of the work that's been completed thus far. I like the review because during the review, the stakeholders, the product owner, can tell you, yeah, thumbs up, this is what I like, we're on the right track. Or they have an opportunity to say, I really didn't think this is what it was going to turn out to be. Can we make these changes? And then the team's able to make those changes. So I really like the review for that point. Now, there's also a sprint retrospective, which you'll hear people call it a sprint retro. And that's just for the team. The Scrum Master normally facilitates this. And here, what I would normally do is ask the team, what did we do well? What did we not do well? And how can we improve going forward? Now, I would kind of change up how that would go every so often, just to kind of, put a little change to it. But I would also let the team know that this is not a time to personally attack anyone. Let's keep it professional, but let's speak honestly about what would take place and how we can improve. There was a time in which a developer had, I take that back, it was the tester. And she had told the developer, hey, can you give me my work in order for me to test all of the elements of this application before the end of the sprint? It was great because now they had that collaboration going on. And I even put it as a backlog item, just so as we're walking through the sprint, everyone knows, hey, this is what's happening. All right. So then let's see. The next event is the actual sprint itself. Now, the sprint itself is anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. Like I said, it just depends upon what the organization decides. So those are pretty standard across the board. Now, there is a little bit of a nuance difference when you're talking certified Scrum Master versus a safe Scrum Master. Now, my personal preference is a safe Scrum Master simply because there's more involved in a safe Master other than the 5 events. So instead of sprint planning, they use the word iteration planning. So where you see iterations are the same thing as sprints. It's just a different terminology that's used when you have a safe certification. So the iteration planning, it also begins, it's about a 2-week time period, but this is driven by the PI objectives and the ART backlog. The PI is a program increment. And that's when you go in and there's a planning session that transpires. The ART is an agile release train. So I kind of want to give you some additional details around the acronyms that I've placed in this presentation. So hopefully you'll be able to follow. But if not, write down your questions because I definitely want to answer all of the questions you may have at the end. So they call it a daily stand-up, or you'll hear people use an acronym of DSU. Same thing. The team comes together. They have an opportunity to talk about the work. They call out any impediments. The difference for a safe Scrum Master is that you have a scrum of scrums. So you get a chance to meet with other Scrum Masters who are on the same Agile release train, which is on the same ARC. And now you guys have an opportunity to talk about, hey, the team is moving forward, or we can't move forward because your team has some work that needs to be completed first. So that's how it goes. Then you have your iteration review, which is again a demo. So you get a chance to demonstrate to the product management team, the stakeholders, and everyone who's involved in that, everyone who's involved in the project to be able to say, hey, this is what we've done so far. Tell us what you think. Is it thumbs up? Is it thumbs down? And then the next one is, again, the retrospective. It's called a sprint retrospective in this case. So it's still the same thing. You do a sprint retrospective from a team level, like what I just discussed earlier, where the team comes in and they talk about what they could do better, what they did well, and how we're going to improve going forward. But there's also an opportunity to conduct a retrospective at an art level, which is part of the inspect and adapt. And I'll get to that one in just a second. Then, of course, you have the iteration, and we talked about that, which is basically 2 weeks. Now, the 3 additional ceremonies and events that are included with the Safe Scrum Master is the program increment planning. So the program increment planning is really, really cool. And you'll hear it called PI planning as well. And it's a 2-day event. It's a full 2-day event. And everyone who's involved in that agile release train, who's involved in that art, or may have work that's going to need to be completed in that art, are at that event. This can be, this can be anywhere from, it could be anywhere from 20 people to over 200 people. I've been in rooms with both. I think one of the largest ones that I've been in it was almost 300 people in the full 2-day event. I liked it because they provided foods, but as I digress. The next event is going to be the inspect and adapt. Now that's the demo that I was talking about. It's a PI demo. So what happens is when you're finished with that program increment time, then you demo everything that you worked on. There's a retrospective that's included. And then there's also an opportunity for everyone that's on that train, the agile release train, there is an opportunity to have a problem solving workshop. And that's an opportunity for the entire group to be able to say, hey, we decided to go down X, Y, and Z last time. I think this time we need to do Q, M, and R. And we come up with different ways to resolve some of the problems that we were experiencing, because there may have been problems as the team was going down X, Y, and Z road. The last one that I have as it relates to an event would be all of the teams demo together, which is the system demo. Now, this is a good part. Here comes these real world situations. So I want to take about 8 questions here that I've consolidated and talk about if this happens on your team as a Scrum Master, what do you do? How do I handle it? How do I resolve it? So the first example here is that the team keeps missing their sprint goals. What do I do? Well, as a Scrum Master, I had teams to miss their sprint goal. And the first thing that I would do is start to look at the metrics. The metrics would tell me why the team failed and how the team failed. You can look at metrics from a daily perspective, a weekly perspective, or at the end of the sprint. So, as a Scrum Master, I'm constantly in there looking to see, are we going to miss or are we going to hit our sprint goal? A lot of times that conversation would happen with the team for me after the daily stand up, or after the daily stand up, because then I have everyone together. If there's any issues or where there's additional help that's needed, or someone doesn't understand what they're coding, I have someone available to answer your question. So, in order to keep a team from missing their sprint goals, my recommendation to a Scrum Master would be to consistently review your metrics. And I'm talking the burn down charts and the various metrics that you have within your system. Now, I'm not being vague in that area simply because I don't know if your teams are actually using Jira, Rally, or another form of system. So I don't want to get too specific on that. And that is the reason why. The next question that could potentially come up is that the developer refused to follow Scrum. And how do I handle that? You have people who will not participate in your Scrum events. I will be honest. But the way to get people to participate in your Scrum event is to sit down and have a conversation with them and ask, what is it about the framework that makes you uncomfortable, or you don't want to follow the guidelines that are set for the framework? Building a relationship with the various people on your team will allow you to understand, I don't want to call it their quirks, but I'm going to call it their needs, what their needs may be. The timing may not fit what the developer needed. The location may not fit, because keep in mind too, some of these individuals are on more than one team. And if they're on more than one team, then what will happen is they're running from your meeting to another or vice versa. So just being able to sit down and have a conversation with an individual will help them to understand the framework, the importance of their communication in the framework, and being able to get them to actually attend the events. Now, the third question here is, you have a product owner who's micromanaging. What's my role? Well, the product owner should not be micromanaging. The product owner should review overall what the team is actually doing, but not as a micromanager. Most of the product owners that I worked with had visibility into the metrics and would leverage the metrics to be able to dictate if we're on track or off track. And then sometimes the product owner would actually show up to the stand up, the daily stand up, to identify, hey, can we press here? Can we get some more work done? Now, If I did have a product owner that was micromanaging, I would have a separate conversation with that product owner and say, hey, I think the team has it. We've been able to make our metrics over the past several weeks, no problems. But hovering over the team, makes them a little uneasy. So it would also be being able to build a relationship with the product owner, because if you build a relationship with the product owner, you can have that honest conversation. Now, if you don't have a relationship with the product owner, you're still going to have the conversation. It just may not be it may be more in a more professional manner rather than having it from just a casual conversation type manner. Question number 4. Management bypasses Scrum entirely. How to push back. I've seen management bypass Scrum, especially when the organization is converting from waterfall to Agile. A lot of times in those cases, what happens is working directly with that manager on a regular basis and being able to help the manager understand this is the way things were done under traditional waterfall project management. But now that we're moving toward Agile, this is how it's done. Let me help you and let me show you how it's done. Now, do I think that an organization would just blatantly ignore Scrum? No. I think a lot of times what happens is management may not understand how to take what the conversion is and implement it into how they actually work day to day. So being able to be that person to help them understand from a Scrum Master perspective how to operate in the framework is a benefit to the leader and to the manager. Team conflict between two members. Do I intervene? Is our question number 5. I am going to say it depends upon when the conflict occurs and to what level. If it's a comment here and there that's really not impeding the work and it's not creating a hostile work environment, I'm not going to say anything, because people are people and everybody's not going to get along, but I don't intervene at that stage. Now, I did have a developer and a tech lead actually get into an argument on the floor. And in that particular instance, I did intervene. And in that particular case, I did ask them to meet me in a conference room. We had a discussion on why are we even having this conversation on the floor and why are we screaming? And it came out to be that the developer had sent his work over to the tech lead. The tech lead did not approve it in time. So it held up the developer from picking up additional work. I get it. So, it was a matter of coaching both to say, hey, all you had to do was say, developer, can you just say to the tech lead, I need this done, and give a deadline? Because I'm backlogged and I can't get my work done until you approve. The same thing would apply to the tech lead. Hey, I'm swamped. I'm managing. I'm working on 4 or 5 different teams, which is realistic. Let me make sure that when I get it, can you do me a favor and just send me a ping in Teams to let me know that you sent it over? That way I can kind of stop what I'm doing and be able to help you out. I highly recommend intervening because in that particular situation, because it was necessary. Then it also shows the team that you care about the team from a Scrum Master perspective, in that you're willing to make sure that everyone's able to work together in harmony. Question number 6, pressure to act like a Scrum Master. What do I do? Again, it goes back to almost to question number 4, and it's educating those who are around you as the Scrum Master that we've moved away from traditional waterfall projects. And I'm not a project manager. Let me help you with how my duties run parallel in some cases to a project manager but how they differ. Education is going to be key for number 6. Number 7, retros feel pointless. Teams have checked out. How do you fix it? Like I said before, you bring in different elements of how to ask the question, what do we do well? What do we not do well? How can we improve going forward? So you just, as a Scrum Master, you become extremely creative in the way in which you begin to ask those questions. I would always sometimes include a game, or I would ask a question to the team before we jumped into the retrospective. I loved would you rather. And so, I had a list of would you rather questions that I would ask the team. You can actually Google would you rather questions, and you can find a list of a ton of would you rather. So I would ask, would you rather be an elephant, or would you rather be a cat? And tell us why. And then just come up with a lot of different, creative ways to kind of get the team to think of something other than the retro, and then that gets them engaged in the actual results. The last question that I have is the stakeholders. Let me change that because I can't see. Okay, so the stakeholder adds work mid-sprint, and how do you stop it? Well, that happens as well. What you have to first of all do is identify that work is being added. And as a Scrum Master, you will see that work is being added if you're consistently looking at reports. Because if you're working in Jira, you can see when that work has been pulled in, if it was originally assigned for that particular time period or not, and then go and speak with the stakeholder and let them know that the work in which they're asking us to complete is impacting the work in which was originally given to us at the beginning. And I did have an example where a team was actually being given work on the side. They had stakeholders calling. They had a ton of different people calling them direct and saying, hey, do this for us. The team didn't want to tell them no, so they were doing it. But the problem is that eventually it started to impact the quality of work, because now we're rushing. We're trying to do what we're assigned plus what you asked me to do. So like I said, as a Scrum Master, the team giving me the feedback, me looking at the reporting, it's just time to have a conversation. So I had the conversation with the stakeholders. I've had that conversation with product owners, but I've also built the respect of the team and the trust of the team for them to be able to come to me and say, hey, this is happening. Can you help me? I think that's important for you as a Scrum Master to be able to do. All right, so now we have careers, certifications, and open jobs. So the career path and the certifications that you can get as a Scrum Master is a CSM or an SSM or a PSM. I'll go into both of those a little bit later so that you'll understand which one may be relevant and important for you. Then I'm going to look at the careers here. So if you start out as a Scrum Master, what can I do next? Where can I go next? Well, from a certified Scrum Master, I got my SSM, which is a safe Scrum Master, which, like we've talked about, there's more responsibility for a safe Scrum Master than a certified Scrum Master as it relates to the number of events and your participation in those. From there, then I started as a release train engineer and obtained the certification for that. The release train engineer, if I place it in simple terms, it runs parallel with being a program manager, because the release train engineer puts together the PI planning event. They handle a lot of coordination between the Scrum Masters, the product owners. They work directly with the program managers. So there's a lot of coordination that goes in being a release train engineer. I enjoyed it when I did it. And then from there, you can move on up to an SPC. And like I said before, that SPC, I've seen it as a safe program consultant, and I've seen it as a safe practice consultant. And here is where that individual helps organizations actually implement and scale safe across all the teams and across the organization. Now, here are the 3 different safe certifications. Now, I can speak deeply as to the Certified Scrum Master and the Safe Scrum Master because I hold both of those. The Safe Scrum Master, you get it from Scaled Agile. It's recognized around the world. I've been in events with them where they are heavy on the practice from a government perspective, as well as an organization perspective and in other countries. The CSM, I got that, of course, through Scrum Alliance. It's also a 2-day course. It's pretty easy to obtain. Now, with the Safe Scrum Master, as well as the Safe Scrum, with the Safe Scrum Master and Certified Scrum Master, there are no prerequisites. So if you're looking to get any of those certifications, you don't have to have any formal project management or Scrum Master experience in order to get those certifications. I know with the PMP, there are requirements in order for you to take the exam and to get the training. Now, the PSM, I can just talk about it from a high level perspective because I do not have my PSM. I do know that the exam is extremely hard. I do know that it is a self-study and that companies will have a tendency to place that on a job application if that's what they're doing in that particular organization, if they are PSM driven. All right, let's look at some jobs. I want to share my screen. All right. Let me move a couple of things here. Give me just a moment. All right. So I'm going to start out with LinkedIn, which I know a lot of you guys use LinkedIn. And when you go to jobs here, you put in Scrum Master. And I'm just going to refresh this because I had it in here earlier today. And this is what came up. So American Airlines is looking for Scrum Masters or Scrum Leads. You'll see Agile Scrum Leads, Scrum Master, Senior Scrum Master. GM is looking for a Scrum Master 1. So you have a list of various Scrum Master roles and types. When I go in here and look, sometimes I like to look at it within the past 24 hours. And a lot of times I like to click remote. This kind of helps you fine tune your search. So if you're out looking, and I'm just sharing just some of the ones across here. So this right here, let me just click on this one. So this is a Scrum Master role. It's a contract role. It's 6 months. It was just posted 16 hours ago. And let's see. I want to see if it's going to say which certification they're looking for. And it doesn't say. It does just say, it says Scrum Master experience and certification preferred. So even though the title is actually Scrum Master, if you have some project management experience, you should be able to get in the door on this one. This one was posted 8 hours ago. This is with Honest Health. So the coaching that I was talking about and the trusted advisor are are skills that are going to be needed in order to ensure that you are a successful Scrum Master. Fostering collaboration and high performing team culture. That's another skill that you'll need to have as well. I'm still looking to see if they're going to call out specifically which certification, and they do not. So in this particular case, they're wanting you to have strong knowledge of Scrum, Kanban, and the Agile framework. Now, when we get into questions, if you want me to answer a little bit more about that, I don't mind. But look, I mean, the pay on this is six figures. Now, there is another tool that I recently became aware of, and maybe you guys already know about it, but I'm just learning about it. And let me share this one. This is jobright.ai. And I really like this because when you go in here under the title of the job function that you're looking for, I can type in Scrum Master, hit confirm. Now I'm in the Texas area, so that's why I put some of the areas here in Texas. And I like this because you can place your resume into this system and it'll give you the percentage that match your resume. So let's just click on this senior Scrum Master position. This position pays between $50 to $70 an hour. Talks a little bit about the benefits, but I'm just trying to get into more of the job description, and I don't see it on this one. Let's pull another one. I'm scrolling through the project management ones because I want to get to Scrum Masters. So this is a Scrum Master position. Yeah. This is a Scrum Master position that was posted 2 days ago, $60 to $65 an hour. Let's do the math on that. Now, the way in which I calculate it, I take the $60 an hour, I multiply it times 40 hours a week, which is $2,400 a week minus taxes. And then I take that and I multiply it times 50 weeks. I know there's more than 50 weeks in the year. There's 52 weeks in the year, but I normally minus out 2 weeks because if you are a contractor, there are holidays in which that company may be closed. And if that company is closed, you're not getting paid. So I like to ensure that I'm calculating it as close to real dollars as possible. So here's one. I don't know how you guys like to do it. If you want to apply directly on the site here, or if you want to go to the company site and apply. Now look at this one. This job is asking for a certified Scrum Master, CSM. Now, for whatever reason, if you have a SAFe certification, they're saying it's preferred. So if you have one or the other, you should be fine. Now, those are the job boards that I like to look at, and those are the boards that I refer people to on a regular basis. All right, so we're going to move some more screens. All right. All right, now we're down to the live Q&A, and it looks like we've got about a good hour to jump into the Q&A, and I am ready. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask, do me a favor, come off mute and jump on in and ask your question. but I'd like to know your name too. Oh, I didn't turn that feature on, so you can only type it in the chat. Cool, cool, cool. All right. Any questions from anyone that you can put into the chat? I'll give it just another moment. And if there's something that I've covered tonight that you want me to cover again or to explain again or explain in detail, or even provide another example, let me know. All right. I think we're good. Mm. All right. All right, so I got a couple of questions here. So I'm going to start with the first question. I'm going to go start with this question, the SSM. Does a person interested in the Agile world, is the CSM, hold on, I'm looking at the question. Let's start with the pay ranges. The pay ranges, I would have to say the pay range for a Scrum Master is going to range anywhere from $45 an hour up. $45 an hour is roughly $95,000 a year. For someone who is beginning as a certified Scrum Master or even a safe Scrum Master, is that doable? Is that possible? Yes, it is doable and it is possible. I'll be honest with you, when I got my certification, as soon as I got my, because I did the CSM first, and as soon as I got my CSM certification, I immediately started making six figures. So that is definitely possible. Let's see here. I'm thinking this question is, does a person interested in Agile, in the Agile world, is the CSM or SSM required? I'm putting both of those questions together from that same person, if that's okay. And I'm going to answer it that way. So a person who is interested in the Agile world, either certification will get you further ahead than someone who does not have a certification. Let me say it that way. Because an individual, if you're applying for a job and it's a Scrum Master job, it may not require a certification, but if you walk in the door and you have yours and the person that's interviewing after you does not, then you have a leg up against that person because you've taken the additional step to become certified. So it's helpful to have it. Does it matter if it's the CSM or the SSM? Some jobs will tell you if they're looking for the CSM or the SSM. But for me, I was able to explain if they were asking for the CSM, I was able to explain to them the difference between the CSM and the SSM and how I would be able to do the job. So I did not let what they were asking me for, whether it's CSM or SSM, if I didn't have it, I didn't allow that to stop me from applying for the job, and I still ended up getting the job. So I will say that much about the CSM or the SSM. If you have it, don't have it, but have knowledge of the framework, I'd still say apply. I like this question. So is the CSM or SSM required, or can a person just start out as an RTE or a safe program consultant? No, that is actually a career path that one can take. You know, my recommendation would be to get one of the certifications, whether that's the CSM or the SSM first, work in that environment for a year. Um, if you're going to go toward the RTE as your next career move, I would recommend getting your SSM, because now you understand what it takes to be a Scrum Master, what it takes to be a release train engineer. Then you get your certification, and now you're a release train engineer once you've applied and got the job. The Safe Program Consultant uses all of those certification and has knowledge of all of that. Now, are there any prerequisites on it? No. But if you want to be an effective release train engineer or an effective and successful safe program consultant, my recommendation would be to get all of the certifications and work in those environments, because you're in a better position to help people out. How would you suggest a CSM, a Scrum Master, address being asked to act as a product owner and a Scrum Master? You know, a lot of companies will ask you to do multiple roles. And for a lot of people, it's a gift and a curse, because if you are talented and can manage your job, there are times in which an organization will give you an additional duty. But to be honest with you, to manage both the Scrum Master role and the product owner role is hard, because the product owner is telling the team what to do, how to do it, and when they want it done. And the Scrum Master is that servant leader and the protector of the team. So there's a clear balance. If you have to do both roles, there's a clear balance between the two. And if it were me and I had to be both, when I'm addressing the team or when I'm speaking with the team, I would frame it in that manner. As your product owner, this is what I'm looking for. As your Scrum Master, this is what I need. And I would keep the balance between the two until I really have to take a hard line to be specifically one or the other. It's just you run a risk of integrity when having to be the product owner and the Scrum Master, because those are competing roles. So you just have to switch hats quite a bit. It's doable, but not ideal. What other questions do we have? That's a good question. Another question that I get a lot while you guys are working on another question. Another question that I get a lot is, you know, how do I move from what I'm doing now into a Scrum Master role? And I'm not even in project management. A lot of times it's taking, the answer to that question is, a lot of times it's taking the Scrum Master application and requirements and qualifications that they're asking you about, and identify how you've done some of those activities in previous jobs. And now you can speak to transferable skills, you know, because they may ask a question of, tell me about a time you had to, you know, resolve conflict on the team. Well, I may have been in customer service, and a customer service agent, I'm resolving conflict all the time. it may not be on a team like a project team, but conflict's conflict. And how you go in and resolve the conflict should be what the answer is structured around. But then talk about it from a transferable perspective. When I held this particular role, we had customers call in on a regular basis. This is how we resolve the conflict. But as a scrum master, I know that I may need to resolve conflict if it's on my team, some of the team members that are there, or if I have to reach out to someone else in the organization to be able to resolve conflict. Conflict's conflict. Conflict is conflict, if I can say that right. Oh, here's another one. What's the easiest path starting with project management, or what's the easiest path to starting with project management or getting a C? If you're going to ask me what's the easiest path as it relates to, getting into project management or becoming a certified Scrum Master, I am going to say Scrum Master simply because the task and the responsibility of a Scrum Master is so different than the task and responsibilities of a project manager. I've done both roles, and I'll be honest with you, my work was not as hard as a Scrum Master as it was as a project manager. Because as a project manager, I had weekly slides and updates I had to send out. I had to manage the project plan. There were meetings every week, sometimes twice a week. And as a scrum master, I would have to scribe and take the notes and send out the notes from the meeting, and then also be able to call out any actionable items that were going to be required and who was assigned to those actionable items. I was responsible for scheduling all the meetings. There was so much more on my plate as a scrum master, I'm sorry, as a project manager than it was a scrum master. As a scrum master, we worked primarily out of Jira, Jira, if you've never heard of it. Jira. And it's a system that is so easy to learn. And I say that because I'm self taught in Jira. There was no formal training that they sent me through. It's just like, hey, we use Jira and here it is. There's tons of YouTube videos and things of that nature that are out there that will teach you step by step how to use Jira. So if you're asking me, from which one would I pick had I had it to do all over again, I would have been a Scrum Master. But at the time in which I went into project management, Scrum and Agile was not as big as it is now. But that would be my answer. Good question. I like that one. So, what about college students who just graduated? And what would you suggest they do? Well, if you are in college, if you're getting ready to graduate and you have one of these wonderful cybersecurity or technology degrees, my recommendation for you is to get some sort of Agile certification, because when you step into the corporate environment, the way in which your organization pretty much is going to work would be in an Agile environment. So if you've come out of college, you have your degree, Jill has her degree, and you both walk in, you're both stellar on paper, you both interviewed extremely well, you have a certification, Jill does not, you should have the leg up above Jill, because the organization will understand, you know what? Dionne has a CSM. So when we bring her in, getting her acclimated to the way in which we work is going to be less time to get her ramped up than it would be for Jill. Not a downfall on Jill, not saying that Jill can't do it, but taking that additional step to get that certification would be great. Good question. Am I aware of any other networking? That's a good question. Are you aware of any other networking opportunity platforms outside of KDMJ? I'm asking because I'm certified, but I'm not successful landing a role in Scrum Master. Oh, great question. Great question. Okay. So for the person who is certified as a Scrum Master, but have not been able to land the role, my recommendation is going to be twofold. And let me tell you why. The the reason why I say twofold is because it's how you answer some of the interview questions as you begin to move forward. And I created this simulator. So whether you have a CSM or PSM, there's a level of questions that's asked, as well as if you have an SSM. And what this does is that it prepares you for the role, and it prepares you for the interview questions that you're going to have. Now that would be the first step. Is let's go back and review these questions. This is a 5-level interview simulator where the questions get harder and harder. And then at the end, there's an AI agent that interviews you, which, I want to prepare people for, because that's the way in which it occurs. Now, depending upon how quickly you're looking for a job and have not been able to find a job for a Scrum Master, my recommendation would also be to look up your local meetup groups. Meetup groups meet on a variety of different topics. There's a ton of them out there, especially if you're in a major city. And so I'm in the Dallas area, and there are Scrum Master, Agile meetup groups. They're free. And a lot of times when you go to these meetup groups, they have people who are looking for individuals for those roles. So, for example, I went to a meetup group once, and before the meeting even started, the gentleman, he introduced himself, the company that he was with, and indicated that they were looking for a Scrum Master. And if you're interested, or if you were looking for a job, to talk to him after the meeting. So they, talked about the topic that they were going to talk about. They pick different topics every time. And then afterwards, you have a networking opportunity. Sometimes they have pizza, sometimes they have cookies, sometimes they have no food. But, they, after that, you get a chance to really talk to people and see, can I network that way? My third recommendation for you would be, if you have a friend in a company and they're hiring for Scrum Masters, my recommendation would be to ask your friend to pass your resume through. That gets you in the door a lot faster than any other application that you can put forth. Great question. I like that one. Um, what about, I have a question here about kids who decide not to go to college. What would I suggest for them? If you have a young person who has decided that, he or she is not wanting to go to college, my recommendation is going to be that they get some sort of a certification, whether it's a Scrum Master certification, cybersecurity, cloud certification, um, and allow the WIOA program to pay for it. There's buckets of money for them. It's a process, and it's not just a simple process for them to get qualified. But if you're not wanting to pay tuition either, why not? But I would have my young person get a certification, work with them on how to conduct themselves professionally, in the interview, and then allow them just to grow from there. What other questions? These are really good questions tonight. All right. So this webinar has been extremely helpful. Thank you. Can we expect more master classes? Why not? Why not? If this master class has been helpful, I will say this much. If you put in the chat what to cover, then what I'll do is put together some additional classes, come in and just let's have collaboration. If the master class um turns into a collaboration session, I think that will be a great opportunity for those who are in the field or getting ready to get in the field or even want to get in the field and just say, hey, you know what? Let's just jump on a live and just ask questions and answer those questions. I'm open to that. I think that's a cool idea. But as far as when the next one will be, is whenever you guys tell me you have questions that you need answered, and I'll put it together. I think that's the last question that I got. All right, that's the last question I got. All right, then let me finish this last little part of this presentation and we're good for tonight, y'all. I lost it. Bear with me just a second. I just grabbed my presentation back. It's going to make me go all the way back out. All right. Bear with me just one moment. I do thank you guys for joining me tonight. I know it is a Thursday night and there's so many different things that you could be doing, but you're spending that time with me tonight, so I appreciate it. So we've gone through all of these slides. All right. All right, so let me go over to what we offer, just so you can get somewhat of an idea of what we do here at KDMG Solutions. So we have the Agile Career Academy. And the Agile Career Academy is where it's a 5-week program, but it teaches you how to do the job. So the first week, we take 2 full days and we sit down and we go over the SAFe Scrum Master certification, the SSM. So it's 2 full days. You get full access to Scaled Agile, the exam. And then once you pass, then you have access to Scaled Agile for an entire year. And then if I'm not mistaken, the renewal fee on it the following year is $100 to maintain your certification. The second week, now we sit down in those ceremonies and those events that we were talking about, the daily scrum, the planning, the demos. During week 2, we go through each one of those, and you have an opportunity to actually do each one of those, and it's hands-on. So I'm teaching you in an environment where it's a safe environment, but you get a chance to learn how to use Jira. You get a chance to learn how to conduct a stand-up, how to do the demo, how to do the retrospective. So it's really cool. The third week is where we do live coaching again and make sure that you're supported in all of those events. So you'll get a chance to schedule it. You'll get a chance to run it. Week 4, we start updating your resume, updating your LinkedIn, and making sure that, you can talk through the transferable skills. We include in week 5 your job search, but we also do mock interviews, and you get a chance, the simulator that I showed you earlier, you have access to that. And so that program normally costs right at 15,000, but I'm making it 49.97 so that people are able to use it and get it. Now, for someone who wants to get the certification, but just want the Academy handbook because they kind of like to do, self-paced learning and things of that nature. Same thing. You still get the 2-day class for the certification, but now you just get the handbook and you do it on your own. That program is 1449. And then the last one is for someone who does not have a certification at this point. So if you just want to do just a 2-day certification, that's 800. Now for this program as well as this program, it's low enough to where your company may even do a tuition reimbursement. So you may want to check and see what the opportunities for your organization would be as it relates to additional growth and development, because they'll actually pay for it. And then I just put them all here with the QR code. It takes you to DionneRashad.com, and it's under the product section for DionneRashad.com. All right. That is everything I've got for this evening. So, do we have any other questions tonight? If not, I will give you guys some time back. All right, I'll give you some time back, but again, don't forget to put in this to the chat what we can put together later and provide some additional training, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.